Good day everyone, I'm Christian Palupalo and I'll be sharing the introduction and objectives of our topic, hazardous and nuclear materials. To start with, do you have any idea what hazardous and nuclear materials are? Well, these are substances nga delikado sa health, safety, and even sa environment. They can be in different forms, like solid, liquid, or gas. Their danger comes from their physical, chemical, or radiological properties. For example, mga toxic chemicals, flammable liquids, or even radioactive waste. Kung dili ni ma-handle properly, they can cause pollution, sickness, and long-term damage sa atong environment. So why is this important? What do you think? Because proper management and regulation help prevent accidents, protect the ecosystem, and keep people safe. Alright, so moving on, let's talk about the objectives of this topic. First, to understand the properties and characteristics of hazardous and nuclear materials, like unsa ilang effects sa tao ug sa nature. Second, to recognize the possible health and environmental effects kung ma-expose ta ani. For example, short-term effects like irritation or poisoning, and long-term effects like cancer. And lastly, to implement safety protocols sa paghandle, pag-restore, and pag-transport ani sa mga materials para malikayan ang spills, contamination, or explosions. In other words, these lessons teaches us to be more careful and responsible when dealing with dangerous substances. Lastly, here's a short trivia. Did you know that nuclear waste can stay radioactive for thousands of years? Well, let me explain something. Imagine that if even after many generations, it's still dangerous if not stored properly. That's why scientists put it deep underground to keep it away from people and the environment. To sum up, hazardous and nuclear materials need to be handled with awareness and discipline because one small mistake can cause big damage. That's all for my part. Thank you for listening. And now to continue the discussion, Kirby and Senna will talk about nuclear waste. Bye-bye!
Good day, I am Ashley May Vivas. So I'll be discussing the radioactive waste. So, unsa man jud ni ang radioactive waste ug ngano po dapat aware ta ani? Ang radioactive waste is any material that contains or is contaminated with radioactive substances and is no longer useful. These materials emit ionizing radiation, so it can be harmful to living organisms. Nganong harmful man ang radioactive waste? Kay nag-contain man siya og unstable isotopes that emit ionizing radiation, which is makadamage sa atong living cells, including sa atong DNA, leading to health problems like cancer, birth defects, and even kamatayon. So, asa man ni siya nagikan? Think about nuclear power plants. So, after they generate electricity, the used nuclear fuel rods became a significant source of radioactive waste. Let's move on to the 4 sources of radioactive waste. We have here the nuclear power generation, medical and research facilities, industrial applications, and mining. So, let me discuss mining as a source of radioactive waste. The mining and processing of uranium and thorium ores, it produces radioactive waste. There are 2 main types of waste, which is the waste rock and mill tailings. Let me tell you first the waste rock. This is just the regular rock nga ilang gikaut para makuha ang uranium ore. Even though it's not the pure ore, but it still has some naturally occurring radioactive material in it. The next one is mill tailings. So this is the most important waste. Once gali ang uranium ore is crushed and the useful part of chemically removed, what's left is a huge pile of fine, sandy or sludgy residue called tailings. Kani nga material is radioactive ngano, kanag-contain man siya og elements like radium and thorium, which are long-lasting byproducts of the uranium.
Nuclear power generation. How does nuclear power generation work? Nuclear power generation works by using fission to heat water. Inside a nuclear reactor, atoms of a heavy element like uranium are split in a process called nuclear fission. This means when a neutron hits the atom's nucleus, causing it break apart and release a large amount of energy in the form of heat, which produce steam to spin a turbine connected to a generator producing electricity. A nuclear reaction controls the chain reaction of splitting atoms, usually uranium, to create heat, which is then used to generate electricity in a process similar to that of fossil fuel power plant. Next is medical and research facilities. Medical and research facilities waste include used syringe, needles, and other sharp medical instruments, protective clothing such as masks, gloves, gowns, and other PPE worn by staff, and contaminated lab equipment, glassware, instruments, and other materials exposed to biological or chemical hazard, which required proper disposal to prevent infection and injury. This type of hazardous waste is produced from medical procedures like diagnostic, imaging, and radiation therapy. Management and safety, proper disposal, protective equipment, training. Employees must be trained on how to handle and dispose of different types of waste safely. Emergency preparedness. Facilities should have an emergency procedures in place, including access to safety showers, eye wash stations, and fire extinguisher. The next one is industrial application. The concept of industry is wide-ranging, encompassing not only manufacturing but also agriculture, healthcare, transportation, and construction. An industrial application refers to the practical use of a product, system, or technology within any kind of industry, including agriculture, to perform tasks, create goods, and provide services. These applications demand high reliability and cost effectiveness for critical operations where failure can be costly or dangerous. Examples include industrial automation and manufacturing, specialized software and healthcare, and materials used in construction and energy.
Good day, everyone. Good day, Sir Alan. I am Sana de Gulashan, and I am here to introduce to all of you our topic, nuclear waste. But before that, we will have a recap of the last slide, which is the radioactive waste. It is a general term for anything that gives off radiation. Nya, kung sa family pa na, mo na siya ang naa sa big family, while ang nuclear waste is a powerful member. Then, I will read to you what is nuclear waste. It is a specific type of radioactive waste. It refers to the byproduct of the nuclear fuel cycle. So, anong need man ta ma-aware, ana? Ka-remember mo sa last slide ni Palo? Or ang introduction di ay? So, dito na siya nga 10,000 years magstay ang nuclear waste. So, grabe kini sa ka-dangerous sa mga tao, maka-affect ni siya sa health nato. Mao nang dapat kita responsible jud ninyo nga mga tao, dili ta yung patakaglabay. Especially kani nga kuan kay dapat kay dangerous kini siya. Dapat siya kuan og thick container, ibutang sa ground para walay maunsa. That's all. And Kirby will discuss the other categories of nuclear waste.
There are three types of nuclear level waste. The first is low-level waste, intermediate waste, and high-level waste. So, in low-level waste, this type of waste contains small amounts of radioactive, mostly from short-lived isotopes. It doesn't require shielding during handling and transport. Examples of low-level waste include contaminated items like gloves, clothing, tools, and filters from nuclear plants, hospitals, and research facilities, as well as slightly contaminated soil and debris from nuclear site cleanups. So, in intermediate level waste, it contains higher concentration of radioactivity than low-level waste and requires some shielding. It often comes from a reactors, structural components. Examples of intermediate level waste include reactor components like fuel assembly hardware, control rods, and reactor vessels parts, as well as contaminated equipment and materials from nuclear facilities maintenance and decommissioning, such as pipes, valves, and pumps. And on high level waste, this is the most dangerous type of nuclear waste. It is extremely radioactive and generates significant heat, requiring cooling and heavy shielding. Examples of high-level waste include spent nuclear fuel assemblies from reactors, vitrified waste from reprocessing, and highly radioactive waste from nuclear fuel fabrication and reprocessing facilities requiring specialized storage and disposal facilities like deep geological repositories or spent fuel.
Hazardous waste disposal site. A hazardous waste disposal site is a special place where dangerous waste like chemicals, batteries, or toxic materials are safely collected, treated, and stored. Its purpose is to prevent harmful substances from polluting the environment or harming people. These sites follow strict safety rules to make sure the waste does not leak into the air, water, or soil.
There are the three main types of hazardous waste disposal site. First is secure landfills. This is used for solid waste like trash or soil that has chemicals. The waste is buried under the ground with layers of plastic and clay so it won't leak and mix with the soil or water. Example, factories may throw contaminated soil or old chemical waste in secure landfills to keep it safe. Second, we have wastewater treatment site. This is for liquid waste. In this place, dirty or chemical water is cleaned using machines and chemicals to remove the harmful parts. Example, water from hospitals or factories is cleaned first before it goes back to rivers or sea. And third, we have deep well injection. This is also for liquid waste. In this method, the waste is put deep underground into rocks, far below where we get our drinking water. Example, liquid chemical waste from oil companies or factories is placed deep underground to keep people in the environment safe.
Hello everyone, my name is Julian Isibalquimi. My topic, effect and contamination. Contamination from hazardous and nuclear materials. So, number 1, circulatory issue. Air pollution often caused by the fine particle matter and gases can have severe and long-lasting effect on both human health and environmental. We all know na ang air pollution kay dili di siya maayo. So, what is example of circulatory issue? The example of circulatory issue is air pollution from the car kanang aso sa sakyanan and factories causing asthma or bronchitis. And number 2, systematic disease. The systematic disease, toxin, chemicals, and heavy metals. So, the example of systematic disease is mercury contaminate in fish, leading to neurological problems. Number 3, waterborne disease, contaminate drinking water. So, what is the example of the waterborne disease? The example of waterborne disease, drinking water contaminated with bacteria like E. coli cuisine or cholera. Number 4, aquatic is aquatic ecosystem sana. The aquatic ecosystem water pollution can lead to the destruction of aquatic habits. So what is the example of aquatic ecosystem? The example of aquatic ecosystem: oil spilling, killing marine life, and destroying coral. That's all. Thank you.
Now, let's explore how this happens. Soil contamination. Soil contamination is when harmful substances like pesticides and heavy metals seep into the soil. They can poison the ground, and this makes it difficult for plants to grow. It damages their roots, and it can make crops unsafe to eat. Wildlife and ecosystem disruption. Contaminants enter the food chain through a process called biomagnification. It is when small organisms absorb pollutants, and when predators eat them, the toxins accumulate in higher concentrations. This can harm animals and disrupt entire ecosystems. Loss of resources. Contamination can make essential resources unusable. Polluted water sources become unsafe for drinking or agriculture, and contaminated land can no longer be used for farming or development. This loss affects food production, access to clean water, and overall community well-being. Cleanup and remediation challenges. Cleaning up contaminated sites is often costly and complex. For instance, the cleanup of Sellafield, Europe's largest nuclear waste site, has escalated to $136 billion due to delays and technical challenges. This includes issues like leaking radioactive waste, silos, and cybersecurity failures. Understanding these impacts highlights the importance of preventing contamination and investing in sustainable practices to protect our environment and our health.
Sir, tapos na po.